All right, beautiful humans, welcome back to another episode of Naked Sunday. I am your host, Caleb Nelson, and I have the lovely, the exciting, the magnificent, majestic, exuberant, I think that's still another good word I like in that list there, Hope Lafferty. My dear, thank you so much for joining me today.
Caleb Nelson. What did you call me? Exuberant?
Exuberant.
I
That
feel
felt
like I
very
need
like
to,
vivacious.
yeah,
I
I
should
need to
pull a
open up
thesaurus.
like some kind of like carbonated beverage right now. That feels like the chispas. That's what they call it, in Mexican ads. It's like it was like Sprite was the chispas. And it's the sparkly. It was like this word that I didn't learn in high school Spanish. It's like, what is chispas? So yeah, so
Is
hope
that
chispas Laperty. Here I am. Why not?
oh, that is the effervescence. I
The
have been thinking.
effervescence.
I've been thinking about trying to put like some theme music or some sound or whatever to like intro this thing. So I got to
Yeah.
think about like maybe I have that like crack open a seltzer or a soda bottle. And like,
Right. The Papa Top, the old Alan
yeah,
Jackson, man. Yeah, there you go. That
yeah,
that really sends a mood, right?
yeah. There could be a vibe on that. There could be a vibe all over that. Here
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Fantastic.
So I told you before this, I don't really have a format for this show, but I do have one basic thing that I like to start off with. I like to tell my guests why I appreciate them because this is my very small effort that I believe if we started doing more of this, it'd be a great step in the direction of a little thing I call world peace. Because when you're
Mhm.
told why you loved, you feel loved and you don't feel so angry.
Yeah.
To that effect, I appreciate you because one, we just were talking about this before we hopped on. You're a great communicator. When I first met you, you're doing the tarot card class at a summit. And for something like that can get all kinds of perspectives, we'll call it. You made this seemingly esoteric thing just like very palatable, very fun, very lively, just like, but you accommodated every voice and opinion in the room. And mind you, there was my buddy and I, like Ian and I, were the only two. I think it was only two dudes in the
No,
room.
no,
I
there
mean,
was Tim was there too. Yeah. So
Tim
there were
was in
three
there. Okay,
dudes,
so three
but it was
dudes.
but the only three dudes at the summit were at this tarot thing, which says a lot about something. I don't think it had anything to do with me. But anyway, keep going.
But there was like, you just know how to meet people where they're at. And you know how to, like, I think not enough people understand the power it takes and the skill it takes to host a room of a lot of different personas. It takes a lot of empathy. Deep down, what I'm trying to get to is like, I feel like you have a very profound gift of empathy within you. And to me, when I watched you do that and made it a game and made it fun and made it playful and made it very introspective while collaborative, I just really appreciated that skill has clearly been honed over time, and you made it so enjoyable, not only for me, but just like for me to be able to connect with the people around me. And that's I mean, I come back to that every time I think about you, like, man, that was so much fun. She is fun, but with this soulful empathy underneath that just really makes it even more enriching. So thank you for being you.
Wow. Okay, and that's all there is for the podcast, right? That's
We
it.
could we could
We
close it
just
right
hit a
there. We're
mic
done.
drop. We're
It's
done.
over. It's
Okay,
over.
thanks. Thanks, Caleb.
You're
Oh,
welcome.
oh my God. Well, as soon as you started talking, let's just talk about, you know, um, first off, I'm noticing that I'm like releasing some things in my throat chakra right now
Mhm.
because of what you just said. Because when you started talking, I would just start to feel like my heart begin to open.
Mm.
And that makes it sound like I am so precious, right? It's like it was, yeah. So it's just
Well, you
kind of
are.
funny just think about, because as you're talking and giving me all of this feedback about like how you perceive what I do and how I am in a room loaded with people, and it's like, all right, so how is it like that? Why am I like that? What is that? And it kind of goes. I think one of the things that I think of is I'm alone a lot.
Mm.
And there's a really interesting way that I um, approach myself, and I've always loved just kind of like extracting myself from the group, like kind of like stepping back and kind of watching and seeing what's there, you know. And sometimes, you know, you're bringing me back to like the story from my childhood
Mm.
that I haven't talked about in a while. When like my mom would have friends that would come over that would have kids our age that wouldn't necessarily be neighbors or whatever, but they would be kids that we would be familiar with, but not everyday type thing. And as soon as they would come over, I'd get really anxious. And so I'd retreat to my room. I just like go hide out. And I'm like 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. I remember the houses I was in, you know, so for a while I just go, you know, back up. And then over time, the visit would continue. Look at me. I am really releasing
We're
something
going
in
through it
here.
together.
This is like the best. This is the friggin' best of like, how do I approach being on a podcast again? Apparently there's some crunk that is coming out. This is delightful. Finding my voice. There we are. You know, Caleb Nelson, Megan Sunday, finding hope, she's Bus Lafferty's voice today. Here we are. All right, but anyway, so I'm going back, obviously releasing something, some kind of energy from this moment. And my sister, of course, we didn't leave the kids just kind of left to themselves. My sister would be out there playing with them. My older sister would be out there playing with them, and I'd be hiding out. And then I would hear a lots of fun, and I was like, huh, oh, okay, oh, yeah, maybe I'm ready for fun. Maybe I'm ready, you know. So I go out and everybody be having fun and everybody be happy to see me, and you know, nothing big would happen. We just like start playing, and of course it was towards the end of the visit, so then within like 5 minutes, I'm sure it's like, okay, see you later, we're gonna go, see you some other time. And then of course, because I'm a little kid, because we all know what happens when little kids get their toys taken away from them, it's like big bawling, huge, like, oh my god, it's like, I missed it, oh no, it's like they're gone. And I sequestered myself like some kind of monk back there, navel gazing, whatever I felt that I needed to do to prepare myself to enter this space. And then in a flash, they're gone. And I'm grieving.
Huh.
Mm. Now, let's jump on that. Let's imagine a birth chart. You know anything about astrology?
Very little.
Uno poquito? Okay,
Treat
you know.
treat me as if I know nothing,
Okay,
especially if
so
anybody listening knows nothing, because that way.
absolutely right. You know, because you know that is always something to think about. All right, so when we're born, if we all know that stars in the sky, there's planets all over the place, and basically the moment of birth, there's like a snapshot that happens of like what's up there at the moment of our birth, right? And they all kind of fall into like this, you know, mathematical arrangement, which is exhausting, which I frankly have never done the calculations of this, but I've, you know, trusted all of the algorithms and all of the, you know, computer programs out there that like kind of like put this together based on eons of math to like figure out the angles of where everything is. So anyway, so planets show up in different areas of the sky, which show up on this map, this snapshot map of when you were born. And so each placement of these planets is in what they call a house. There's different houses. And there would, if you could imagine, there's 12 months of the year, there's 12 astrological signs, there's 12
Hmm.
houses, right? Something base 12. We love base 12. As a side note, juggling is also base 12, but that's another, I don't want to get
I truly learn something new every day.
Oh my God. Anyway, we're mostly based on a 10 base system, you
Mhm.
know, like, you know, 10, 20, 30, you know, we love that. But 12 is like what astrology seems to like throw with. So anyway, so there are 12 houses. Each one means something different. So, say the first house, if you could imagine, the first house would be about independence, about being your own person, being, you know, this is the first time you're stepping foot into the world, right? And so it goes around. There are houses for home, there's houses for success, there's houses for education, those types of things. So, all throughout, each house has a different meaning. So most of my planets are in either the 12th house or the 11th house.
Hmm.
And the thing to know about the 12th house And again, if we can imagine, if the first house is me marching into the world, the 12th house is all of kind of the unconscious, the dark underbelly, the primordial muck
Hmm.
that is secretive, that is hidden, that takes, I don't know, all 12 houses, all 12 lifetimes, all 12 steps to get to know,
Hmm.
right? You don't get that wisdom right away. So most of my planets are in either the 12th or 11th house. So the 12th house is like this esoteric space. So I'm like entering in the world, kind of like not really entering the world.
Hmm.
It's half my planets, or a third of my planets. Then the other third of my planets are in the 11th house. And the 11th house is the house of group. It's the house of community. It's the house of universality. So if you think about like this, being as a young one and throughout my life, these are the perpetual themes. And I didn't learn about this until much later, of course, in my life. But the perpetual themes are, how do we work with like the spiritual space in community?
Hmm.
And it's all right there from the moment that I entered the world. Boom.
Well, lends itself perfectly to how we just talked about that moment where I met you, presenting essentially about a spiritual topic in a
Right.
community that needing to find a way to connect with a
Right.
breadth of different personas, especially this is a, we'll call it a professional, dare I say even entrepreneurial
Yeah.
themed ish summit
Yeah.
in a world of more math and concrete and like, tangible kind of stuff, push against
Right.
stuff. This, I'm going to call it softer side,
Yeah.
this less tangible, little more belief based, which there's a
Right.
strong argument as to like entrepreneurship is a highly spiritual endeavor in that it's purely your own belief that this thing is going to work out and that
Sure.
you're going to have to continue to act in said faith.
Right.
um there it is, like,
Well, it's about this intuition too. It's about like this tapping the intuition.
yeah.
And the thing that I've had to learn, I mean, you didn't see me like run out of the room and go catch my breath. I mean, you never saw me do anything. I've learned over the course of my life to enter the space
Mm.
and not have to do all of the, you know, oh, they're coming, run away type of thing. Um it's not that I don't get nervous, because I spend a lot of my time when I'm not alone. I spend a lot of my time in public. And that sounds strange because, of course, when you're not alone, you're in public. But, it's, but like the capital P public, I speak to groups and I'm in a performance space and I, am interfacing in a place where people are actually paying attention to me, because that's why they showed up, is they're paying attention to me. But one of my mentors, Dave Blanchard, said to me, it's like about being nervous, and I take this to heart. Every time that because there's like a there's a kind of a fetish about performers about like being nervous. It's like, oh, I don't know if I'm doing the work until I'm nervous. But what Dave said to me is like, when you're nervous, you're thinking about the wrong person. And that is how I always enter a room. There's one thing that I do before I show up, either running a seminar, giving a talk, or giving a performance. It's like I always dedicate the event to somebody. For a while in the spring, of course, I was like dedicating to the folks in Ukraine, because it was like that was like so present and ever present, and they're always kind of like back there for me. I'm not a big hawk. I kind of like communicating and not necessarily lobbing explosives at one another, because that ends up even unintentionally when we're trying to communicate, because you never know how it's going to be perceived
Yeah.
when we say something. It can be just as volatile. But so there's like that helps me kind of remember and ground myself. It's like, it's not about my nerves. It's about, what am I bringing to you? What am I bringing to the greater good? Like you say, like, it's important for us to acknowledge and say what we appreciate about other people, just cuz, you know just because they're in our life space.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that helps me kind of work through my nerves. And it probably comes out a few different ways with my performances. I tend to be very loquacious, as you can tell. Lots of words for lots of things, lots of ways. Don't repeat yourself. Keep like coming up with like, the next idea, you know. But I've realized I'm starting to forgive myself for that. It's like, yeah, but that's what people laugh for, you know? I mean, they're laughing at that. They think that's hysterical that I just kind of keep like, you know, pulling the thread of my own thoughts and you know, the sweater keeps unraveling. It's delightful.
It is. I mean, stepping into that it's certainly hard, and obviously you've cultivated a career of performing, and I love. I think that might be a great title for this whole thing. When you're not alone, you're in public. That is, yeah, yeah. What is
Yeah,
that? But like, how
yeah.
far is that? Like, are you ever alone? That's maybe even a little farther kind of like thought process around that as we talk spirituality and things of that nature. But no, I liked where you're going with that. Before we keep diving too deep, let's make sure we properly introduce you.
Oh
And
my goodness. All right. Yeah,
to,
sure.
to
Yeah.
that
And
effect,
we haven't? This was not it? Okay,
no,
that's
we're just warm. This is a soft opening, girlfriend. Soft opening.
yeah, you know, here we go. Bring on the band and then we'll like come again. And then we'll like do the monologue and come again. Okay, that's good.
Well, better than that. You know yourself better than I. So, Hope,
Mm.
who are you?
Oh my God. Didn't I just mention that? Didn't I just answer that question?
Kinda. In
Kind
one way,
of.
a
Kind
little
of.
bit, a lot of
Okay.
it, maybe a bit.
Who am I? I've been asking myself that. You know, there's a big joke, all right, in my one solo show called Inhibitionist. There's like a line in it, and it's, you know, I'm talking about learning how to crawl. And I asked the question, okay, so, and there's a situation about me learning how to crawl, you know, that I have to confront the physical world. Surprise, surprise. You know, again, 12th house, all the things. It's like I don't live in reality. My, you know, my brain energy is the thing that's propelling me from place to place. It has nothing to do with this thing, whatever this thing is, you know, his meat pocket, you know, whatever this is. You know, but yeah, but there's a point at which I ask, it's like so to the audience, like what age do we learn how to crawl? You know, and you know, I mean, do you know like what age people learn how to crawl?
I want to say it's like one or two, somewhere in
Yeah,
there.
yeah, well, exactly right. 18 months. Yeah, there you go. Like split the difference. There you go. About 18 months ish there in there, right? And then the next question I ask is, and so at what age do we become an existentialist? So that's boom. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Who am I? Who am I? You know, people give you direct answers on that, don't they? They actually
No.
explain. They oh, okay. They always like kind of like tease it out. Okay, that's fair.
Well,
What are you looking for there? Because I, you know, I want to meet your needs.
that's my whole point.
I want to
Why
meet your needs.
I ask it that way let me give you the reasons behind why I ask it.
Please, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you turned a question about you into a question towards me.
Oh, by the way,
So
I was trained as a psychotherapist, so that might help you
ding
understand
ding
why I
ding
just
ding
did
ding.
that.
Well done. So when I was I want to say it was 6th, maybe 7th grade, I mix up the two because I think I had this teacher twice.
Oh yeah.
He was my English teacher, Mr. Bagnuolo, and he wrote on the board, goes over, who are you? Who am
Yeah.
I? I think it was
Yeah.
either who are you or who am I?
Sure, right?
Wanders back around to the front of his desk, leans into it, crosses his arms, and just goes, so who are you? For a, what is that? A teen, preteen?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The tween. Yeah. Yep.
I am almost 36 at the time of this recording. I was, what,
12, 11.
12, 13,
Mhm.
somewhere in there.
Mhm.
This has stayed with me for well over the majority of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like asking it that way
Yeah.
because I find a lot of people don't sit with that question of like, well, who really am I? Am I the clothes that I wear? Am I the title that I have on my door, on my office door? Am I the the role I've decided I am because of X, Y? I like to just know. I like asking that question because every single time I get a different response, and
Oh, absolutely.
most of the times I get a, oh, man, just like that. And then
You're right.
it goes wherever it goes. I'm
Oh,
curious how people see themselves. I like
right.
these types of seemingly silly, stupid questions
Right.
because it opens up so much like, hmm, well, how do you introspect? How do
Right.
you see yourself? And I think also for me, it also gives me better context on how somebody likes to be loved and served and appreciated and seen and heard and everything in between and all that. So
Right. Right.
maybe that gave you a little time to simmer
Well,
through what you wanted, what was going to
it
help with your response.
it kind of did. It brought me back. I have to tell stories because this is what I do, right? It brings me back to when I was learning how to do Kundalini yoga. That is the type of yoga that I practice in 1993, which was way before it was cool. Kundalini's never really taken off, just for the record. But but I was learning from a couple of Sikhs in Madison, Wisconsin. So again, yes, and one of the meditations that we got into was exploring the notion of non-attachment, right? It's a very Buddhist notion, right? And it wasn't like who am I? It was like who am I not? Like what am I not? And then it just started coming, and you just kind of start saying, well, I'm not a psychotherapist, and I'm not talking to Caleb Nelson right now, and I'm not on a podcast, and I'm not standing in Blue Lake, California, and I'm not, and you start like backing away from that which is definitive. And I could do that for hours. I mean, I could just like erase myself I mean, that's, we get into a problem with women that like erase themselves. Okay, that's like a thing too. But if we're going if we're going in with like this ego, because all of us have a definition of self that just frankly helps us get out of bed in the morning. I mean, that's not a wrong or a not or a maladaptive stance, but to be able to kind of call that into question in every moment. It's like, this is not real, and yet it's real. Boy, I'm really good at skating these questions. Did I mention I majored in philosophy? Anyway, yeah. Uh-huh. Yes.
Well, it's a hard.
Next.
These are hard things
Well,
to
yeah.
talk about. I mean, and I think you brought up something really powerful there. It's like it's not a bad thing that we use these tools, and
At
it's
all.
what I think
Otherwise, we'd
people.
just be kind of floating atoms, and we'd never have any. We wouldn't make anyone laugh. I mean, let's be frank. I mean, that's floating atoms really don't have a lot of girth.
No.
You really want to be able to like
Well, how do you
bond with somebody.
connect?
Yeah,
Bonding is a
but
perfect word. I'm
yeah,
saying connect. You're saying bond. It's the
yeah,
same thing. How do we interface with each other if we don't
right,
define some set of rules
right,
on how to do it?
absolutely, yeah,
I think the problems that we forget, and that's where I think with that I am not situation there is actually pretty good. We're moving ourselves almost to non-existence so that we don't get stuck on like this is the only way it has to be. Like
right,
each like you and I have a relationship one way, me and another friend might have a relationship a completely different way just because it interfaces better that way. Knowing
right,
how to negotiate those terms is a skill set. When you're basically this way, it's like I got to learn the rules of this game, and that's kind of dictated by just general societal rules. But
right,
as you mature, I think that's where, if we'll call it the identity crisis, is like, oh, I'm so rigidly stuck into this definition. I don't know how to flex my own creativity. I don't know how to like blend in my other aspects of my personality. It's like I'm not just a what's the word I want? I was like, I'm not just a personal trainer. I'm a blah.
yeah,
I'm a this. I'm a
right,
that. And it's like, cool, you're
right,
all those things. How do
right,
you communicate that in a way that's meaningful that will
right,
also achieve the result you're looking for? That's
right.
kind
Well,
of our
and
game.
herein lies my biggest problem with marketing,
Yeah.
right? Because I get asked questions. So who are you? What do you do? What value do you bring to the world? All that kind of stuff. And then I'm looking at, well, how much time do you have? And then, you can't throw out. It's like, but I'm not really any of those things, because then it's like, well, I do have to pay rent, and I have to fill my gas tank, and I like to, there's like things, but this has like been my dilemma because I've lived long enough, and I've thought long enough, and I've been long enough um, to get really good at a lot of things. And again, when I say get really good at, number one, I'm never done. And number two, I'm not good at everything. I remember, oh, I was so smug when I was smug, whatever. When I was in college, you know, people would say, it's like, well, what, they'd ask me and they'd learn about like all these like things that special skills, things that I could do, just whatever. I can do a number of things. And I would be hit with the question, is there anything you don't do well? And I said, well, I'm really lousy at football. That's what I would always say. I'm not good at playing football. That was always my, I have not gotten any better at that. I've never even tried, frankly. I've gotten worse at certain things because I don't practice. But and my mom used to say to me, she said, Hope, I don't know, and she still says it to me, frankly. I don't know how you know what to do because you're so good at so many things. And it's like, so it's this, I mean, I want to say it's a double-edged sword, right? Because that's like the cliche, but I don't know how many edges the sword of hope actually has, because it's like, because it's really hard to know how to say, oh, well, this is what I do. It's like, wait, I thought you were a coach, but now you're like a clown. It's like, what? It's like, and oh, I thought you were a psychology person, but you're like teaching tarot. So it's like all of these kind of lack of a through line.
Mm.
So I was thinking about this with a friend of mine aloud about 3 or 4 months ago, because it is challenging for me to promote my work, because my work is different. I have like lots of different things. It's a patchwork of work. And it hit me, it's like, oh, what I do is I've got something for every chakra. And if you know the chakras, there are 7 chakras that, go from, the spiritual stuff to your thinking brain or your intuitive brain to your communication center, which we alluded to earlier when the frog was in my throat, when I was like recalling the thing about, hiding out when I was a kid, to the heart, to the confidence level and the solar plexus, to the creativity, sexuality space, and of course the root, which is where we kind of function in the world. So I've got something for each one of those things. And it's like nobody complains about the chakra system being like fragmented, right? Nobody complains about that. That's like a streamlined idea. So it's like that's pretty much what I have. I've got something for every chakra.
The title of the show might have just adapted to like the Hope's Edges. I like that.
Hope's edges. Yeah. I'm pretty edgy. Yes. Yeah.
I think the hard part, this is, especially since a lot of entrepreneurs are the people who listen to this, similar. And I am not going to say I've been any different when it comes to the challenge of like, what do I do? I don't know.
Right.
We're going to sit in a room. We're going to solve some problems. Fuck it.
Yeah.
That's what
Right.
we're going to do. You tell me. I don't know. What's your thing?
Yeah. What do you need? Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Something that I think that actually, how you're like, oh, I'm good at skirting around the questions, is learning how to turn really learning how to get somebody to ask another question is the more powerful thing in all of this. And I'd go so far as to say that that is probably an even better, I'm going to call it a marketing
Sure.
philosophy
Yeah.
for somebody who is a combiner of things.
Yeah.
Is that like, that's where a great tagline of whatever, I say a tagline of I help people look better naked inside and out.
Oh yeah.
And then
Right.
it becomes, there's not like a I know what that means. I think it kind of knows what it means. Like, you mean so I'm gonna like look better naked? Like, yeah, but like think so the other thing. I was like, well, what does that mean? It's more just like, let me ask another question. Tell me
Right.
what it's more about sparking curiosity
Right. Yeah.
in
Absolutely.
somebody than not anything else, as opposed to like telling you. I don't know. I'm not telling people shit. Like, that's the funny part about coaching. I'm inviting you to ask some more questions and answer them for yourself.
Oh yeah.
It's really hard
And
because,
it's also not very sexy. You know,
well,
it's like, here, do something really hard that you're going to feel really vulnerable and that you're going to tell somebody a really big secret that you've never said to anybody else. And it's been holding you back for your entire career or your entire adult life or since you were a kid. And it's like, and now you said it. And now you got to live with the fact that you said it.
Mm.
And that gets pretty crunky. And you're not going to feel immediately better. That's the other flip side. It's like if you're not going to feel immediately better and you're not going to suddenly have a full bank account and you're not, I mean, so like there's all the things that happen like this like nexus of disclosure. And we're all we're all lost with like this like concept of the secret, right? It's like, oh, we're going to manifest the things, and it's like, oh, that's great, but then we end up broken and angry because we like know how to manifest it in our mind, because our lower brain doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy. It just knows stop or go. It knows fight or flight, or relax. So if we can envision things, and this is the thing I see with my clients, and this is the thing that I see with my artist friends and my inventor friends and my, all of it, like anybody who can vividly visualize what they want for themselves. The flip side is reality doesn't always show up like that, and it certainly doesn't show up like that on a dime, and that's the problem, because then we get all these neurotransmitters like coming in and we're starting to feel really good, get the dopamine happening, get the oxytocin happening because we can see it, we know it's there, and then the next day we get up and it's like it's not there, and so we go into withdrawal, like actual withdrawal, biochemical withdrawal, and then we go into interpersonal withdrawal and like start doubting ourselves. It's like, well, I thought I saw it, it was there, I can see it, I can visualize it, this is how it's supposed to be. And it's a setup.
Well, I think that's where the hard part, especially, I heard this term. I'd love for you to take it for a ride in a second after I just put it out there. Spiritual narcissism. And I think there's a lot of people who are like, I'm just manifesting, and they're just the universe is, but it's what I've noticed with that is it's often just a cop out to say like, I'm not going to do anything.
Right.
Like they're forgetting when I think of spirituality, often I vision things as masculine and feminine. You need to put both those energies together to make a complete system. You need them both. Right. Masculine tends to be that very practical, do the fucking work thing, and it's not super pretty, it's not super like feels, it's did you do it or did you not do it? And that's where I've started to see if you can change the way that feeling is manifested into oh, I did the thing I'm supposed to do every day, as in, and we'll talk business because it's easy. It's like, I'm going to market, I'm going to put out a piece of content that's really, if there's all these different layers to who you are, well, you better talk about all those different layers a lot for a long period of time and invite them to come to that and like talk about their problems in a lot of different ways of how that shows up. That is not easy. Right. It is tough. And it's everything you talked about. But the way I see it in that lens and how it becomes sexy is like, if you start to crave the vulnerability of like, oh, I got that feeling. I put that feeling out there again. There's that high. Put that feeling out there again. There's another layer of my shell that's coming off, and I'm real, and I am here. You can see all of me. I don't have anything else to hide behind. And in this day and age, what I think people are looking for, by and large, when it's very difficult to trust anything out there, is consistency in authenticity. Right. Who are you, and are you that all the time? Right. So that I can kind of get a decent read. And people are usually willing to look beyond at least some of the initial rough edges, or like, at least I know where you stand. At least thank you for being clear with me, so I know I know how I can negotiate this information now. Thank you. As opposed to like, is this just another bait and switch thing, or am I going to deal with a different person after I really have a conversation with you? It just makes it easier. So like, I can choose to invest more energy or not, but at least you know.
Right. Well, and I think some people call that work.
Yeah, maybe it might be work.
Might be work. Takes work. I mean, I sorry to like distill it down. Well, and it's interesting,
No,
I'm
I think
struck.
distilling that down was perfect. I think that that needs to be said.
Yeah,
That's the thing that needs to be said. Like, it
yeah,
does still take work.
absolutely.
So thank you for saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, it's the work. It is the work. And was that Pressfield? Stephen Pressfield was talking about that in his books, and yeah. And I think it's interesting how your perspective of what masculine energy is like get things done and be very practical, and it's not very and it's kind of messy. And I think about like that's also like female energy too. I mean, you think about like all the stuff that we have to contend with just to kind of, I don't know, get through the month. And I'm going to leave it at that. Although I have a show about that stuff. It's called Our Bodies, Our Shelves. That's my second show that, yeah. But it's like, and again, there's a practicality too. I mean, each energy, if we're going to go yin yang about it, each energy has its own practicality to it. The thing that I notice is it's not that we're in this earthly energy. It's like there's there's a there's a tendency toward escapism because it's again we get all the neurotransmitters going so we feel better. If we just fantasize about the stuff and we imagine and we manifest and we live on this cloud of whatever it is, and this is coming from somebody, take it for what it's worth, who has like many planets in the 12th house. So I'm lucky I can like stand up at all. And, if you know my history of injuries, it's like it is a fight, between me and like, my higher self and the actual physical
Ground.
laws of the earth, you know. But it's like that kind of thing. It's not even masculine, feminine, binary, non-binary, whichever way we want to think about this. It's like some people just don't want to deal because it's better that way. And honestly, is that maladaptive? Probably not, because it's gotten them this far. So again, I'm never going to say any choice that we make, any habit of thinking that we have is negative. Sometimes they're actually superpowers. Sometimes they are superpowers. Like the ability to vividly visualize. That is a friggin' superpower because I'm amazed at how many people can't do that. I'm always kind of struck by that. It's like you don't think, like you've never thought about who you are, like stuff like that. It's like I've been thinking about that since I couldn't even say words, and I don't even remember thinking that, but I know I've always thought it, and so it's like, so I'm always amazed that folks don't call certain things into question. But I'm also just a tad jealous because I often think they're not burdened, right?
It's the ignorance is bliss situation right there.
What's that? Say again.
It's kind of that ignorance is bliss situation right there.
Kinda. There's there's a freedom that I think some folks experience. That I don't know. I'm not going to speak for you, Caleb, but here we are in this conversation. So I think that there's a little weight that comes with always, the figuring it out
I
and being
agree with you.
fascinated by the figuring it out.
Yeah, I will openly say that's something I've struggled with. I think you and I are very aligned in this side. Probably why we get along so
Yeah, yeah.
seamlessly. Um, I think the undercurrent below that is just the curiosity.
Exactly.
If you're inherently curious, you're going to keep asking questions.
Right.
The problem is you're sometimes going to get answers, and then you're going to be like, "Oh shit, I didn't know what I didn't know. That was a lot easier than what it is now."
Yeah.
And I don't think this is not from my perspective like a hierarchical thing. It's I just asked more questions, and that's what
Right.
it was, and
Right.
that's I can align with you on that statement. Like at times it's envious of somebody who's like, whatever.
Yeah.
There's nothing. It's just
Yeah.
this. And, okay. But I saw
Yeah.
like the 7 other sides of this gun, this one random dream I had last night. And like, now what do I do with that? I don't know.
Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. Just grab a beer and go to the Bills game, man. I mean, it's like just chill. Just like take a break.
One of the lessons around that, and I credit my father for teaching me this when we were talking about some other stuff, and it was really more about maintaining relationships, but I think the broader concept applies. He goes, the surface can be deep. And I was like, oh, I never thought of it. He's like, sometimes just sending somebody a message like that's heavy that's big. Like you just paid attention. Oh, sometimes it just being what it is a very profound statement.
Yeah.
And letting it be that is maybe perhaps divine. That's maybe a boastful statement, but like that's a big statement to say that I can accept what is in front of me. Is tough, but the other side of me just wants to keep scratching at that itch until it becomes a sore, and then you hopefully don't make it too much of a problem. So
Right. Yeah. Right.
so let's pivot back a little bit for a second. How did we get here? You've shared a little bit of your childhood stories, and you've isolated, and then you came back out, and then had the 5-minute temper tantrum because you didn't get to have all the playtime you wanted. You've done some shows, you've done coaching, you've been trained as a therapist, you've studied philosophy, you did Kundalini yoga with some monks or the Sikhs. Pardon.
Sikhs in Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah, right. The Madison, Wisconsin is like the important thing adjacent to the Sikh. That's just delightful for me.
You wouldn't expect that. I will say that I didn't.
No one does. No one gives any credit to the middle part of this country, and I just love this middle part of the country.
Got to give it a little bit of love. Got a little. There's called
the
Heartland for a reason, isn't it?
Well, and even then they can't stand the Heartland idea. That's like the thing. It's like calling it the Heartland. I mean, I guess some people do, but it's like they're just terrific. I don't know. I mean, I've only married Midwesterners, so what can I say? I mean, both the marriages failed, so say what you will, but but that wasn't their fault. That was it wasn't because they were from the Midwest.
It was just because it didn't work out.
Well, yeah. I mean, it didn't work out. There it is. All right, that's a longer story, and we do not have enough. We do not have enough time, Caleb, my friend, to really kind of go into that. I mean, you barely asked me what I do, and we've already spent an hour. Just you want to talk about I mean, we can, but it's
take it where you need to take it. Start where you want to start and take me wherever you gotta go.
No. But anyway, see how we got off track again. See, this is the ride. This is the chispas. This is the effervescence. This is where we are, man. This is the effervescence. We're following the tangents until we pull on the reins and bring ourselves back. So what was your question again, Caleb?
How did we get here? How did Hope go from this person sequestering herself in a room while all the friends were there, the guests were there, to now being this performer, this coach, this person who's got something for every chakra? How did we get here?
Oh, and we need to perpetuate that, something for every chakra.
That actually might be the title. I sit in most episodes and just thinking about what's the title of this thing going to be? What's the punchline? Like, where are we going?
Right.
Something for every chakra might actually be the biggest hit.
Right. Hope for your chakras, something. Yeah, I'm not even going to help you. Yeah, I know. If you can't play with the pun of my name, I mean, and that's like the crazy thing, because I'm trying to write this artistic statement. Like this is one of the things on I've got some short plays available on this interface called New Play Exchange, and the one of the main ones is this play that I just recited to you called Our Bodies Are Shelved, and that I told you and Ian about over beers, and it's basically about just teaching medical students how to give pelvic exams. So it's a very timely and also very apolitical play about women's health, and every woman has to have it doesn't have to, but like every woman, every person with a vagina, shall I say, undergoes pelvic exams, because that's like core healthcare, and half the population has no idea what happens in that space, and the entire population, aside from healthcare providers, even know how people learn how to do that. And so it's like a goofy thing. So anyway, so I'm back. I'm like, I posted this up. Other folks can perform this. This is the idea for this show, because it seems like it's a timely show. And I'm going around the country to perform it too. At university audiences particularly, but because it's available on New Play Exchange, I have to write an artistic statement, and I've had an artistic statement up there for a couple of years because I've had a few plays up there. But I'm just not satisfied with like what that is, like how do I, like what do you do, right? Who are you? I mean, this is like basically that, grab me by the collar and, put a gun to my head and make me tell you what? Okay, so basically the thing that I've kind of come up with is like, well, read my name and then you'll have a sense of what I'm trying to live up to. I mean, that's, when you come in with Hope Lafferty, when people are immediately responding to my name that I did not choose, like the hope part, I did not choose that, right? And my entire life, I hear that, and it's like that's a thing. That's a thing to live up to a noun and a verb, like I've got this like thing that like I carry with me into the room, and as soon as I open my mouth, I say what it is. And so that's what I bring. And then just the last name is just ridiculous. I mean, like, how lucky did I get with like, gee, of course, I have, do clowning, and of course, I know how to juggle and know how to, help people stay in the moment because of that silly beginning. People think that it's actually spelled Laugh, which kills me because it's like, really, somebody would actually do that to a, anyway.
Could always officially change it to really like lock that in. That
It's
would have
okay. No, I like my dad enough, and I don't have to like. I think it's locked
stage
in.
name it. Stage name
It's
it. There you
it's
go.
yeah, it's locked in enough. Most people don't see it. I mean, so it just goes where it goes with their minds. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that kind of is the essence.
Mhm.
That's all I've been trying to do, just kind of serve and entertain. Those are
Mhm.
those are the things that I do. I serve and entertain. Yeah.
What got you into the performing arts?
Oh. That's a really good question. Well, arts overall. Let's start there. My dad's an architect, and my mom's a chemist, and I think we might have talked about that before, which is a strange thing in and of itself, especially in that generation. They were both educated in the 50s, so they were weirdos to begin with. Sorry, so we're weirdos, okay. But one of the things that they did, I grew up in Syracuse, outside of Syracuse, and Syracuse University used to have art classes taught by the BFA students, or the education majors that, and so ever since I was, could walk, my folks sent me and my sister to take these art classes. There's pictures in the paper because of course, you're going to take pictures of like little kids, painting on, murals and things like that. And I still have some of the art. One of my favorite, right, get this, one of my favorite paintings that I did, tempera paint on just that brown paper that they wrap meat in, that comes in rolls. I painted a friggin' ghost, man. It was a red ghost. And the ghost had a dog. Who knows why? But anyway, yeah, and I'm 4. I painted it when I was 4. So, I was tapping something when I was a kid. So,
Clearly.
but then when we got to school, our school offered dance lessons. So my mom, who was a dancer, I mean, she took dance lessons when she was a kid, um, enrolled us, my sister and me, into dance lessons. So I took up ballet mostly. That's what I really liked a lot. And I studied that through middle school quite seriously. And also in that time, this was growing up in the 70s, there were a lot of variety shows like on TV. So shows like the ones that I remember, people think about like Carol Burnett, that was kind of a variety show. But there were other shows like Sonny and Cher. There was Donnie and Marie, which were great because they were young. They were like kids, and so we could watch them. And they always had like these segments where they'd bring on different performers. And inevitably, they would always bring on these mimes. So Marcel Marceau, I was exposed to very early, and he was late in his career. He's this international mime, French mime, and one of his most provocative performances is him escorting kids out of Nazi Germany, out of a concentration camp, think I remember, or something, or like hiding them away. But he was like this clown that was like bringing, saving Jewish kids. I mean, just like, and this is comedy, right? And he's doing this like in this way that is, and I'm watching this as a young girl. So I'm seeing this and I'm seeing this in these types of things. And then there's Sesame Street. Sesame Street debuted when I was 4.
Mhm.
And so I fell in love with the Muppets. So there are all these things that were like kind of stacked with me. And then I did my first talent show doing a kind of interpretive dance thing when I was in 5th grade,
Mhm.
and I won. And then I did another talent show in 6th grade, and I won. And I kept winning talent shows doing this kind of quasi made up dance form that also integrated mime and clown and things like this. So it was really early that I started to move my body. And then I also, we took piano lessons, and I have enough of an ear that I qualified to be recruited to play flute for our band, and in school and stuff. So I studied flute forever, and just all, kind of lots of artistic things. But the other piece of it, because all that is very public, right? The other piece of it was I found writing when I was 9. I started writing, as I like to say, recreationally when I was 9 years old. I started writing stories and, poems and things like that. And so I've just always written. I used to joke when I was in high school, I'd rather write a book than read a book, because it was like the time that I got to vividly visualize just lots of things. And yeah, so those were always the threads. It was always like there was a music component, there was a movement component, and there was a language component to my work. And that's just kind of continues in its way. I don't perform musically; that's not my strong suit. But as far as writing and physical performance, it's you know that's where I am. But the other piece of it is I what happened in the 80s is mime fell out of favor, and it actually became the subject of ridicule. And I abandoned it because I was a smart girl, and I also didn't, I always wore glasses, and I wasn't stick thin, and that's what dancers were. And I had an Italian body, and no dancers have Italian, upper body. Let's call it Italian upper body. That's what I have. But but so I call myself a casualty of the mime wars of the 1980s.
Hmm.
And yeah, and so I abandoned it for 30
Why?
30 years.
I do not
I
know
know.
why it fell out of favor. I don't
Oh,
know
because
nothing. I know nothing about that
exactly.
historical epic hip hop.
Exactly. I know people don't. People missed it. Well, all I can say is watch Spinal Tap if you've never watched Spinal Tap,
I'm
and
not.
there will be and there's a scene where Billy Crystal and Dana Carvey, a young undiscovered Dana Carvey, are working this party as caterers, and they are in whiteface, dressed as mimes, and the big joke is like mime is money, like that kind of thing, and it was just really starting to be ridiculed as like a lower art form.
Hmm.
Only in the last couple of decades has it kind of showed back up. But it was a real sore point. I didn't like to admit that I was a mime. Like
Hmm.
like through college, it's like, oh no, don't tell anybody. That's not cool. And I, kind of abandoned it. But yeah, so 2018, I kind of got back into all of it. So I left in 1983. So I was gone a long time.
Is that when you started exploring training as a therapist and coaching and all those methodologies? Is that when that started to come around?
Well, yeah, the early stuff, yeah, because I was a smart girl and I came from, practical people that I couldn't imagine asking them to go to acting school at that point, and I didn't have the maturity. I mean, you had to be something other than what I was at that point. I was a late bloomer. As creative as I was very much not not comfortable being out in that
Hmm.
period. I was much it was much easier for me to, you know, I discovered psychology. Psychology at that point was all about sex and aggression, and that was like a really cool thing for an adolescent brain to like entertain myself with. So yeah, so I just kind of, went into that in college. Didn't really look back. But when I there were a number of things that happened. with the change of how treatment centers were funded in the late 80s and early 90s. Big changes were happening. And so I had to really kind of look at what I was going to be doing with my career because I was working in addictions at that point, and none of the treatment centers were being funded in the way that they were when there was more public funding, and insurances would cover longer stays and things. So I really had to kind of look at that. So I kind of re-entered the writing space in 93. That's when I kind of got back to when I started studying yoga, starting putting myself back in my body, and then I started, working in radio and doing things, writing seriously and not doing the the psychotherapy anymore. So I kind of like left that to, pursue, more of a creative space, more of a body space, and that, kind of ebbs and flows, a little bit. I found in again another 10 years, 2003, another 10 years, things kind of cycled back around for me that I ended up working then as a medical writer. So I kind of was hybriding like my clinical training with my writing, but still not doing the performance, not doing the public stuff. It was still very much hidden behind the desk. And then when I turned 51, it was just like, I've built a really interesting freelance career doing this very smart work, but I'm not doing the work I want to be known for. It's everybody's other great everyone else's great research, and it's great research, and I worked with some really world class investigators, changing a lot of ways that cancer particularly is being treated,
Mm.
but it wasn't mine. So I kind of started to realize it's like, no, I need to get back to, maybe this acting thing, maybe this performing thing. And so that's what was that? That was 2016 that I made the decision. So yeah,
Mm.
good number of years. And it's taken, pandemic notwithstanding, I've just been kind of progressing in that space, but also doing coaching. Then my coach basically, and it was because of my coach actually that I really got gutsy about it. I took the Habit Finder, which is the coaching methodology that I use now, and I realized that coming out of psychology and looking at all the things that I find fascinating, this measure was really quite elaborate and simple. And I'm curious about your response to just taking um,
Mm.
that assessment. But that's what kind of started this train. Got the train out of the station. Was I started working with a coach, and I started realizing it's yeah, all right, I really can start to do some weird things again and trust that I'm going to be able to build this just like I've built everything else in my life. Just every other decision, every pivot I've made. Why can't I pivot this way? I've got all this other, work and business and marketing expertise that I've developed over the course of my life. And it's like, all right, yeah, I'm not 20 anymore. And, maybe, I can't do what I could do when I was 20, but I couldn't do it when I was 20 because I didn't allow myself to do it then. So it's like, how bad is it going to be? How bad are my somersaults going to be, So, yeah, because I wasn't doing any.
Well, it strikes me as what I've found a lot of people who found, what am I going to call it? I'm going to call it superficial success in a lot of
Mm,
different areas. So a lot of
sure.
capable of a lot of skills,
Yeah, yeah,
but and have all the tools, more tools than
yeah.
realistically they'll ever need.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, way too many.
But it's there's this Ian and I were actually talking about the other day. It's really talking about a different level of coaching becomes not so much about teaching you new stuff, it's about helping you integrate all of who you are into the one thing, so you don't have to always feel like, well, I'm this. You know when to pull out the tool,
Yeah,
but the tools are already like, I'm like, I'm the tool shed, just come to me and
right,
I'll answer your questions at the help desk and we'll just do what those things are. But like, what is that help desk for? That's
right,
hard to say, like, hey, I'm
right,
all of these things.
right.
But the problem I solve is really what you're talking about. Like, how do I align all these things to find the
Right.
thing that the person that I really love and deeply want to connect with in a personal, professional, whatever venue, how do
Yeah.
I connect that? It's the integration of all those things.
Right.
And you alluded to it before. That is not an overnight snap your fingers and all
Right.
the things happen. It is
Right.
vulnerability. It's repeated bouts of vulnerability. It's learning how to accept that. It's learning how to enjoy that.
Right.
It's learning how to pace that and to put it into practical terms and to communicate it back into just so anybody could understand it. It's
Yeah.
you used the word distilling earlier, and I
Yeah.
think that's
Right.
one of the most beautiful words on the planet, because most people think of keep it simple, stupid. It's not about making it stupid easy. In
Right.
a sense, it's about how do you take the most purest, like one or two lines out of this whole thing, one or two
Right.
words, and say, this is
Right.
what you're going to get. So
Right.
that even a child's been, oh, cool, I'll go for that ride. I get it. I
Right.
understand enough to say, I'll take the next step. It's really
Right.
hard. That's
Right.
integration is really hard. It's almost like we blow ourselves up to find a way to put ourselves back together, except like you were there the whole time. So I just
Right.
needed to be able to see all the pieces and then,
Absolutely.
oh, then kind of bring them closer, or at least a feeling, a sense of they are closer to ourselves. So,
Well, and it gets back to this idea too, playing with the concept of integration. It gets back to like who am I and who am I not, right? I'm called back whenever I hear talking about integration. I'm called back to a friend of mine who is now a ceramics engineer, so like super specialized, but he once said to me, alluding to our calculus studies, well, if you can't integrate, then differentiate. And I always love that idea too, because it's like maybe it isn't like that isn't doesn't have to be the goal either. It's like what if we don't try to like find the through line? What if we just accept that this is an interest and this is a thing, and how do I keep spinning with the curiosity? Because once we make a decision, I mean, granted, all right, the pressure's off. We finally have a release. Okay, there's something really beautiful about having an insight that just, after all the rumination and then the Lonergonian like insight, all right, we can breathe now. But there's also something about it doesn't end. I mean, there's still going to be this next thing, and each is equal. Each is equal. Being and not being are equal. Yin and yang are equal. You know, Integration and differentiation are equal. They just are.
that's a great way of looking at that. Mm.
I'm gonna
I have
I'm
ideas
just gonna
after I
keep
hop off of this.
pulling out the things to make the Jenga thing fall. That's like what I do. It's like I pull them out. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what is it? What is it? One of my playwriting instructors once said to me, he's like, "All right, so Hope, you tell the emperor that he has no clothes while you're doing a striptease. That's what you do.
Well,
Make it
that
Sunday. Make it Sunday, everybody. That's it. On that note,
we have arrived at the conclusion of the thing. Da, da, da,
oh,
da.
thank goodness.
Emperor has. That's going to be one of the teasers for this episode, for the record.
Terrific. I love it.
Well, I think that that's part of. Um, I think that's actually a beautiful part of coaching. Coaching is
Yeah.
is meant. I learned this from another friend of mine. He was on the podcast. It's about modeling and mentoring, but
Yeah.
most people don't know what they don't know. They need to see it. I need to visualize it. So while
Right.
doing a striptease, okay, I'm modeling. I'm
Right.
modeling for how you become vulnerable. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, now that I've showed you that, can you now see that? Hey, you don't have any clothes. Like it's that idea
Yeah.
that I think is, as we've talked about, marrying this esoteric with the practical,
Right.
is can you see it? Like that's I'm telling you this concept about yourself right now, but I need to show you in a way that goes, oh, like that makes sense. I understand it. I heard
Yeah.
this quote. I took a picture of it. I'm going to read it actually. Where is it? This is in my this Canva, by the way. I use Canva for like all of my stuff.
Yeah.
There's always, when I upload my little things, there was this quote that it had there from, was it Aristotle or was it, I cannot remember what. It was so good,
Yeah.
this quote. And of course, as soon as I want it, I cannot find it. It was so good. It was more or less that like the purpose of art is to showcase something's inner beauty. And I'm
Yeah.
butchering this thing. That was my takeaway from it.
Yeah.
But man, it's like it's telling you what's behind this without telling you without, because you
Yeah.
can't show what's behind it. It's an idea, it's a concept, it's
Right.
a feeling of beauty, but it's bringing out the inner beauty and showing you this surface thing. And
Yeah.
to that effect, so I look around the world right now, I've talked to a lot of like marketing companies, I talked to a lot of things that
Sure.
people like. I think what we're all, as we talk, this is kind of like this conversation coming full circle. Most people are just looking for authenticity. Can I trust what I'm looking at?
Right.
Because there's been so much bait and switch. There's been so much dissolving of trust, the dissolving of the foundation of the relationship underneath it. That can we trust something at face value? And if you look at something long enough, and that's a theoretical sense, you'll find the cracks. Just look at the language enough, listen to the tone, listen to how they present. It's even just like the way people present their smile. It's you see the people who've
Right.
got the painted on look. It doesn't look like they're really smiling. Like you look
Right.
like you just had you're on one right now. And that's what I think is cool about the performance art you've talked about so far, is that you're really trying to bring and marry both the feeling, but then also like, here, let me also teach you something at the same time
Right.
so
Yeah.
that you can take this home with you and then elaborate on it in your own life. That's not easy.
No.
That's not easy. I did not have an appreciation for that skill set probably too long in life. I should have
Yeah.
appreciated it.
Wow.
Considering my father is an artist, as if we're looking at his artwork right behind, so he gives me
Yeah.
something of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that I think there's a fear behind that. It's like, this is a feeling I'm putting out there, and this is my interpretation. There's no real right or wrong. It's what do you think about it? And it's
Right.
1-to-1 right or wrong. Not like
Absolutely.
there's not a score. There wasn't 1+1 = 2. It was, I'm gonna rate it how I think. And
Absolutely. Subjectivity is like a scary, scary thing.
yeah.
No, yeah. And I mean it's just such I mean one of my acting instructors basically said every time you're on stage is it's a traumatic event. Because you think about it, like you have no control over anyone that is watching you. You have no control over them. No control over how anyone's going to perceive that work of art on the wall, right? No control. And Lord knows everybody's got a response. And so, and I mean, the goal is, of course, to like come up with like kind of a shared response, but there's too many variables. There's no, and we're not talking about ego. I mean, what? You know, the idea is to have a shared recognition of what is true, shared recognition. We're all just kind of like changing our thoughts in response to this. And ideally, we're sharing this moment because when I'm a performer, you're my audience. You know, you're my audience, but I'm also watching you,
Mm.
you know, watch me. And that lends itself to, you know, whether or not this thing's going to fly today. Lord knows. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you've seen me after 25 years of me practicing how to be a decent public speaker. You know, that wasn't what it was in 96. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Oh, not even close.
Process.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what would be like top 2 or 3 lessons? Because you've been in so many different arenas. I've
Yeah.
got to imagine there's some common through lines that you've picked out of all this, especially knowing that, okay, the majority of this audience that's listening to this, they tend to be coaches, they tend to be owners of their own business,
Sure.
leaders in their own right, responsible to many people, wear many hats.
Yeah.
So I think that's, if nothing else, they've already related, like, oh, I've worn many hats in my life.
Sure. Oh
She's
my
worn many
God.
hats. Huh.
Yeah.
What have been some, maybe the top 2 or 3 takeaways from all these different arenas that you think would be beneficial for somebody like, hey, these are some of the big things. Stick to
Right.
these and you'll be all right.
Right.
What'd that be for you?
Well, one of the things that keeps coming back to me that was my mantra when I was a young therapist was always only ask. If you don't know how to respond to what someone is saying to you, don't answer. Pose a question. It's that staying curious thing. So like I always go back to like always only ask. Like if I'm like listening to someone say something, it's like, mm. And there's a point that we allow, like sometimes we feel like we need to fill in when we're listening to someone. And if a question doesn't come up, just keep listening. Because an inspired line of inquiry will present itself. It will present itself as long as you're listening enough and listening with your whole heart. That's like the thing. And everything I do is all about listening. Acting is completely about listening. People think that it's all about like telling. It's like, no, it's absolutely about listening. That's why the audience is so important, especially when I'm doing a solo show, because they're my partner. They're the ones that are actually giving me what I need to do next. How do I approach this? And when there's a scene partner like on stage with me or, whatever, then that's who I'm listening to. But it's more interesting for me as a performer to actually have the audience be my partner, because it's just so many more variables. And we talk about the variables and how traumatic it is. It's like, okay, yeah, let's bring it. Let's go. My planets in the 11th house are saying, yeah, come on, you're good with group. Go. Bring it to big. So a lot of it just like goes back to curiosity for me. And lack of ego. There's this thing that my dad said to me when I was a young punk, because I was a punk, but I like how I put that in the past tense. I was a punk. Yeah. Still a punk, but I've like learned some things. Like the thing that drove me crazy is this message that my dad gave me when I was young, and he basically said, "You can't be too professional." And I hated that right away because I felt it was like a straitjacket. But over the years, and especially with all the stuff that we learn about hubris and how people just take advantage, it's like if you rely on just being professional, you're not going to cross any boundaries. You're going to be able to have that authenticity without having an ego attached to it. So I've kind of come back to that idea of like how important professionalism is, and knowing what this relationship is, knowing how we're connecting, and we can connect full-heartedly and totally authentically with someone in a professional relationship. And actually that's safe. And that's like the idea. That's how we allow folks to embrace their own self-disclosure. When we create a safe place for them by being legit, like you were saying, like having the authenticity. But I think that there's a professional approach to that that needs to be respected, for sure.
I took that statement
Hmm.
initially in a very different. It was
Yeah,
like you can't be too professional, as
yeah,
in like a don't be too. It was actually I took it as don't be too serious.
exactly. Right. That's how I took it too when I was a kid. Yeah, but
That was interesting, and then as you kept going, like, oh wait, no, she's saying it a different way. Now, what was interesting about where it then shifted to was that I started, and this is something Ian and I talk about all the time, and Ian, especially in his own work as like business consulting, coaching side of his stuff, and
yeah,
he's been more on the financial end. He says, it's like, how can you treat your home like a business? Like, people think it's not, what's the word? It takes the feeling out of it. No,
sure.
being responsible and knowing how and having a process to communicate on big decisions, whether it's balancing your budget, like the budget for the
Right,
household,
right,
planning for retirement, buying a house, getting a car, organizing the family schedule.
right,
When you treat it as a job, you can actually enjoy the experiences because the
right,
baseline, as you talked about safety,
right,
the baseline is the foundation is pretty solid.
right,
Now you can go to those experiences with confidence,
Right.
clarity, and you can be fully present,
Right.
which, as you're talking about, is that it can be very deep and meaningful. And so
Right.
just
Oh, and
I,
I would add to that list of like things, always have snacks. That's what I'd like to
I
add today. You always want to have snacks. You never
that'll be
know
the third
when
one. Always have sex.
you just need a little snack, Definitely that helps.
I'm setting this up.
Buy the car, sure, buy the car, but if there isn't something to crunch on every once in a while, man.
I'm sending this clip to my wife and telling her, because
Terrific.
one of the first things she's like, just keep my belly full. I'll be okay.
Yeah,
Which is a hard and fast truth. I think
absolutely.
all husbands out there know the hanger is real, and your life will hang in the balance if
Absolutely.
if it is not accommodated.
Absolutely. I mean, we have to take our own ownership of that too, but that's why I'm a big person with snacks. Yeah, that's
Always have snacks.
yeah.
That
Always
is
have snacks.
phenomenal. God, I love you. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Caleb.
Always have snacks. I'm taking a peek at the clock right there.
Oh,
Where
of course. Oh my
I
God,
want to be
yes.
respectful of
We've
your time. We've
we've
already
spun the
pushed.
yarn, sir.
We already flew through like an hour and a half of awesomeness.
Yep.
If somebody's listening right now and they're like, "Yo, I need some hope in my life. I need to
Right.
integrate more hope
Right.
into my life.
Yeah.
I like this idea that there's a multifaceted approach to aligning myself.
Yeah.
How does somebody best connect with you?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, the best way, of course, there's the LinkedIn. I mean, that's kind of where I live with the professional space.
Mm.
But if if they're curious about like evaluating their habits of thinking, which if you want to walk down that primrose path with me, I can walk down the primrose path. It's habitfindercoach.com/hope. And that'll lead you to this assessment that you and I have been talking about a little bit. Do you want to give just a little blurb about like your response to the assessment, like how you would explain that assessment to somebody?
It's like a lot of other test assessments. It's just a different way of looking at reflecting upon yourself. It was a lot about like categorizing these things, like how do you view them from
Right.
good to bad, and it's
Right. Well, it's the
completely
rank order.
subjective. It's a
Yeah,
rank
it's a
order,
rank
yeah.
order. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I haven't dived too deep into my results
No.
because I figured you and
No,
I were going to
sure.
talk about it more, but
Yeah.
I mean, you know me, I'm a bit of a junkie for self-reflection, so anytime I have an
Yeah.
opportunity to observe how I interface with the world and how I can,
Right.
what nuance I can pull from that, it's cool because it's like, oh, um here's a user interface that's got, I mean, how did it shows up almost like thermometer things. I was like, that's if I kind of thinking about like thermometer scales, it kind of looks like
Yeah.
green
Yeah.
versus red. And I was like, that's easy. It makes it very what's the word,
Visual.
palatable, very
Yeah.
visual and palatable for somebody who's like,
Absolutely.
oh, where do I land on some of these things
Right.
that I think sometimes are difficult to describe. So like, once you have oh, this is how I would show up in this arena in my life
Right.
with a little more texture. So, oh, okay, I can see how this will adapt.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was probably my biggest takeaway from.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, exactly. I think that just the results alone, you don't even have to talk to me. I mean, the results alone, you get 42 pages of free results, right? Just for spending 10 minutes maybe on this rank orders. There's two
Yeah,
lists that you rank order.
10 minutes
Yeah,
is
I
probably
mean,
about right, maybe even less.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I kind of say if you're spending more than 10 minutes on it, you're overthinking it, and the idea is to just kind of like what what do you think about? And it's not this kind of Likert scale, kind of like always, never, and somewhere grading like most of the assessments are, because it's a different math. It's more of a deductive way of looking at it as opposed to inductive, which is most of like the Myers-Briggs and the DISC and all those wonderful, they're fantastically validated, great assessments. But the habit finder I just love because it's really simple and it changes over time, and it gives us, like you say, arenas that we can kind of look at, and which habits of thinking are helping you and which habits are sabotaging your efforts. And again, I always want to go back to the idea that our habits of thinking are adaptive. Like we are thinking in those ways because they helped us kind of get out of a lot of jams. But now maybe they're not so good. Or maybe you've spun them into a superpower and that's why you're an entrepreneur, because that's like another thing. It isn't like you have to have like completely perfect ways of thinking. Lord knows. That would just take the fun out of everything. You'd keep really boring snacks at your house if that were the case, like the perfect, carrots and stuff. Really?
Might be what's in my house, but
Carrots and popcorn, that's all you'd keep at your house is carrots and popcorn and oats. Sorry. Yeah, but yeah, so that's how
are you looking at my cupboards right now? That's what
I don't know, you got it, you've got the health that you're after, man. I'm with you. When you're a woman and you hit menopause, it does not matter what you've done for yourself all your life. It still goes to crap.
We do what we can. We do what we can.
But there you go. You don't have to worry about that. Congratulations. You just have to worry about it on the receiving end, which that's another show, but we're not going to go there today.
Brace for impact.
Anyway, yeah. All right. Yeah. So that's how you'd reach out to me, habitfindercoach.com/hope. And I'll give you a free debrief. Let's talk about your results for half an hour. That's terrific, because they're a lot. So, yeah.
It's always cool to understand yourself, and especially, as I've said, like the people that listen to this, that's the kind of stuff. If you're holding on to stories about yourself, if you're needing to shift it from a story and identity to a tool, that's different. That's cool. And those are the things that, if you're hitting plateaus in your life, that's part of the introspection. I heard this when I was at my last ayahuasca ceremony, and he was talking about his teacher, his shaman that or his taita, that's what they called him. He said, there's an infinite amount of healing that we can do in this lifetime. And all that lends it back out to me is I think of, oh, well, you're going to learn some more lessons. What are you going to have to let go of? What are you going to have to shift? And the only way to do that is to go in and to look at yourself and be honest. And these are great tools to be able to do that. So I will make sure that is in the show notes for anybody who is looking to connect with Hope.
Terrific.
My dear, leave us with parting words of advice. A great lesson. Something to simmer on.
My. No, all right, no pressure. Parting words of advice. First off, thank you, Caleb.
Thank you.
Yeah, any chance you can thank Caleb for anything, I encourage everyone to thank Caleb, because
you can make me blush.
Yeah, so like all the posts and all the comments and all the things that you need, it's like, thanks, Caleb. So that's one start. Always only ask. Stay curious. Be curious about everything. And if you feel constrained, then you are. And it's like, maybe stay curious about that. Start asking, what's the rub? What's the thing that's making this not feel right? And you could have a very beautiful situation in your life and it still doesn't feel right. What is that? And there's just some habits of thinking that are probably happening there. What you deserve, what you don't deserve. Always ask who you are and who you're not. And remember the snacks.
Yes. You recapped those 3 great lessons in just like a very succinct tagline punchline thing.
There you go.
It's gonna make my teasers edits for this whole thing so much easier. Thank you.
Yay.
That was really
Thank you. Oh my God, my job is done. I want to make your life easier. That's the whole idea. That's the whole reason for coaching, is you make other people's lives easier. That's it, man. Well done.
Oh, thanks, I love you. You're amazing.
I love you.
You're fantastic.
Thank you. Likewise. Yeah.
I feel very blessed that you came into my life at this one amazing tarot card reading seminar practice. I don't even know what to call it. Workshop. We'll call it that.
Sure. Why not? Call it all
something
of it.
like that.
Why not? Yeah.
We had a blasty blast, and I don't know why you're in my life, but I feel like you're in it for a good reason, and we're going to see where it goes. So thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being a valued human being in my life and just warming my heart with love and happiness. So you've done that for me today.
Thanks, Caleb, man. Yeah, you opened up some stuff with me, man. Well done.
We might have to talk about more about that off camera. We'll see.
Of course,
I don't know.
Why not? Thanks. Thanks,
On that
Gabe.
note, everybody go check out the show notes. Go take the quiz stuff. Go connect with Hope. She's rad. We love her. That's all we got for today. And until next time, I remind you to love everybody.